So yeah, we're on to the fourth class of the six wisdom hats, and so kind of getting up towards halfway through, and the flavour of the course is where ancient wisdom meets modern day problem solving, and trying to take really the best from both. So the very practical, topical information from Edward de Bono's Six Hats, and then the I would say universal wisdom of the Buddhist understanding of our psyche, and which is summed up with all the wisdoms of the Dhyani Buddhas. So to put it into context, the way that we can think about it is that our nature isn't different from the Buddha's nature. Fundamentally, we're not different from a Buddha. We're made up of the same building blocks, the same elements, the same core components. We have a body and a mind. We have all of the nascent qualities of a Buddha. The difference being that Buddha has brought them to fruition. And for us, all of those qualities remain kind of unformed, like potentials, like raw potential. But the fundamental building blocks are the same. And so that's really what this course is about, and how to access those and let them develop and come to fruition. So you don't have to be a Buddhist to be able to get some use from the class. Main thing is to have kindness and curiosity. That's really our starting point for anything, isn't it? And so with that kind of attitude of it's so nice to be with fellow human beings, and the curiosity about finding out, uh, in the first week we looked at the Edward de Bono's Six Hats. The second week we looked at the Five Wisdoms, and then this week then we started diving into each of the wisdoms and the hats individually. Last week was the red hat and feelings and discriminating wisdom. And this week we're going to look at the white hat, which is to do with facts and data and mirror-like wisdom. And so we'll have a meditation to set the motivation and set the scene, and we'll also end with a meditation. But just before we get going with that, Ian, was there anything that stood out for you, or that you wanted to share, or how you've been going with the hats, or in particular the red hat? How's it going?
Thanks, Miff. Yeah, look, it's going really quite well. I've just had a lot of cause to reflect on my intention and the way I'm exercising that at the moment. And this is a really good way of I guess categorizing and walking around that intention and looking at its different facets. Just this morning I've come from a high school where I'm involved with Ray's Foundation in youth mentoring for an at-risk cohort that the school chooses collaboratively with the students and the parents. And so, this year is coming to a culmination. And so just thinking about those kids, the contact that I have with them, the brief opportunity that I have to maybe influence the way that they look at problems in front of them, and some of them have significant problems in front of them, is really quite valuable to get in a brief opportunity to get the language right, to be skillful in the way that I can reflect that to them. So thank you. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I think today's class is going to be super useful for you in that case. It's just, even just the word reflect, this is exactly what we're going to be looking at. And so how are you going today? How's it been this week?
Well, I got my chemotherapy report out yesterday, so that's really and I've had some mentor meetings with mentoring some of our new junior staff, and saw my chiropractor today because I figure I must have damaged myself during the accident. So that she kind of worked the knots out of me. And no, I saw my daughter start vet school in Colorado on Friday, so that was really nice. But no, the week's just going. I've got a tax deadline coming up, so I've been a bit busy. So yeah, that's how my week's going.
Wow, that's a broad spread right there.
Yes, I know there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So as we go through the class, I mean, there are quite a few facts that you said, but how we respond to those facts, that's what we're going to be looking at. Because as we'll see, facts don't, things that happen, things that we identify as an instance or a thing, they don't exist apart from the context. And so actually how we look at them really changes when we change the context, when we change how we frame it. And even though we think facts are the most obvious things, that's the thing that we share with everyone, it's right in front of us. As with everything, the more we start investigating, the more they disappear. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So we're going to be looking at how to work with the facts of our life and our existence really skillfully, and also the facts of other people's lives too, especially the vulnerable, like you're saying, Ian, where you've just got a few seconds, a few moments to be able to reflect those facts back to them in a beneficial way, especially with at-risk youth, where so much of who they are is reflected back to them as worthless. But I just know, just from being a kid at school, it just takes one person to value you, and it stays with you the rest of your life.
I
It
remember.
really, really does. Well, it stayed with me anyway, Ian. So, right. So I'll get screen share up just to introduce our mandala of ours. Well, we've got the 5 wisdoms, and then the 6th hat, the black one, is about the protectors. So today for our meditation, the meditation's called Funhouse Mirror or Clear Mirror. So let's just settle our posture and have a short reflection to focus our mind. So get yourself into a comfortable position and really try and allow your body to relax. Settle into that comfortable position and become present in the moment. And slowly bring your attention inward, perhaps by resting your focus on the breath. Let go of any distracting thoughts or stimuli, just leave them on the periphery. And let your breathing become naturally slower and deeper, allowing each breath to center your awareness. And embrace the present moment with openness and curiosity. And even though our body may be still, there's still a lot of things going on in our mind. So we can reflect that all phenomena arise or appear to us, arise in our mind, due to countless causes and conditions. And on top of that, our own perception often distorts those appearances. So acknowledge any preconceived notions or biases clouding your perception of yourself, of your environment, and gently release judgments and let your awareness expand. While our ordinary perceptions coming in through the senses, they have limits, but enlightened awareness is boundless. With our ordinary awareness, our usual mind, what distortions might your mirror mind currently hold? Your deep reflective awareness will wipe away the bias obscuring you. So envision a vast, pristine mirror reflecting the world flawlessly. Does the mirror judge what it reflects as good or bad, or simply allow each reflection to arise? Is the mirror distorted like a funhouse mirror, reflecting exaggerations or obscuring whole portions, elongating others? Or is the mirror perhaps dirty or clouded, all steamed up, seeming a barrier to reflection at all? So envision cleaning the mirror, your mirror-like wisdom reflecting all of existence perfectly. And recognize this innate wisdom's pure, luminous nature within yourself. Just as a mirror's surface reflects everything impartially, mirror-like wisdom perceives all phenomena without bias or distortion. Mirror-like wisdom sees the world with clarity. Mirror-like wisdom illuminates the truth that all phenomena are interdependent, ultimately empty of any true or real self. An undistorted mirror is free from perceptual bias. It's free from conceptual bias. It's free from prejudice, from ignorance, and it unveils reality in its entirety, from the very large to the very small, without leaving anything out, and without any exertion at all. So in your mirror-like wisdom, relax all effort. Let awareness naturally shine without grasping. Observe perceptions arising and passing like reflections on a mirror. You are like a self-aware mirror. You're not the contents, but the container. So we can carry this mirror-like awareness into our daily life and into this class. with full confidence that its reflections reveal the path to awakening. And then take a nice deep breath, bring your focus back to the room, and we will revisit this idea of a mirror, and then how to discover where the distortions are so that they don't harm us or others as we go through the class. So just to kind of recap, we've been looking at, well, the course is the 6 wisdom hats, and the process of using these hats, all the different skills available to us, whether we're dealing with problems, whether we're trying to develop new ideas, whether we've got to make a decision when the unexpected happens. So all of these things can become conditions for us to develop these wisdom hats. Just put on the hat that we need. We can work through everything. So last week we were looking at the red hat, which is all about how we feel. And that's why it's so important to check in before we start anything, just so that we become acknowledged as a human being, that we have value because we have feelings. And the thing about the red hat, the most important thing is that our feelings don't have to make sense. We don't have to justify them. They're just there. We don't have to feel guilty about them. We don't have to explain them or try and make them seem important, because they are feelings, they affect us, they matter automatically. So checking in. And then today we're looking at the white hat, which is like a chef's hat, that taking in information. So I like this one because it's like all the ingredients. What a chef has, you have all the ingredients. What those ingredients turn out as all depends. The facts, the form of the matter. Understanding the data. And where this hat leads to is the wisdom to do with Vairocana Buddha, the aggregate of form. And the wisdom is called the mirror-like wisdom, or mirror-like deep awareness. So that takes in information, but when, from a Buddha's point of view, it's omniscient, all the information is taken in accurately without bias or judgment. So that's the big task. And also, of course, Vairocana then is to do with purification, because it's to do with our form, our expression. So I'll just get the whole entire thing up here. This is what we're going to go through today. We start off with we start where we are, which is a really helpful question, asking, well, what happened, and to be like a reporter. Then we'll have a look at the time of the basis, the ordinary human being that we are. Usually this type of hat manifests as a disturbing emotion. So instead of clear information coming in, it's clouded. And at the very least, we're just naive about things. But it can lead to the camera-like wisdom that takes in information perfectly. And the hat, well, we can call it the mirror-like reality of relativity. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but they go well together, because we think, oh, reality is reality and that's what it is. But reality is relative. There is no real reality, it's relative. So we'll see that as we keep going through. The action is, well, what do we have to do? What do we have to work with in any given situation? And the result, all the forms that a Buddha can appear in, the embodiment, what we need to embody. So, starting at the beginning, when we're looking at facts, I heard about an amazing experiment that a university lecturer did, where he got someone to just walk onto the stage and do one thing and then sit down. And then there were about 400 or 500 people, students in the audience. And then he asked them to describe what happened. And you'd think everyone would say the same thing. No, some people said a man walked on. Some people said a woman walked on. Some said they were wearing a blue jumper. Others said they were wearing a green dress. Some said they sat down. Others said they stood up. So this was, they got them to write it down afterwards, so recalling in memory. And so, of course, what happens in memory is that we associate different things together and get them all mixed up, and we'd absolutely swear, no, we saw that. And yet, not one consistent reportage. So that kind of blew my mind. It depends on what's associated with, what's been in your mind at the time. It really depends on your mood, how you read a situation, which is why we do that red hat first. So when we're trying to figure out what we have to work with, the facts of the matter, the data, we've got to put on the hat almost like of a reporter, I suppose, of asking what happened, who was there, what were they doing, what were they doing just beforehand, evidence. And often when we speak, we will say, and actually, Sue, you did this just before, and these kind of things quite confuse me because you said something about chemotherapy, and then you went ... as in like this is what it feels like or this is what it means. But I don't know what that feels like or means. So this is how it's all shorthand how we interact, isn't it? That we say a fact, and because that fact has great meaning and import to us, we think that's part of the fact. But to somebody else, they don't know. So even then, the facts really depend on the background of the person understanding the facts, or in my case, not understanding the facts. So it's not so much like biases or prejudices, but it's just we bring our whole worldview to things, and because it's our worldview and we're going on autopilot, we just don't think there's any other worldview until we crash up against somebody else's worldview. Ian, yes.
Yeah, I was just cross-referencing this with a few other things, like in one of the counselling modalities, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. It's underpinned by relational frames theory, and that really sort of lays out that people's context for things ends up being inseparable from, so they reason their facts in order in the context of their relationship to those facts, and that sometimes is problematic and almost never shared.
That's right, because of course it's not shared because it's our context. Why would we even question it? But it's like because we think facts exist out there, that's where things go wrong. We think we are separate from a fact and it exists out there, but actually the fact is the context. And so the problem is that we're unaware of that. Facts don't exist in a vacuum, even though that's how we treat them. And there is this persistent myth, it's been comprehensively debunked, of objectivity. Objectivity in science or objectivity in journalism. It just doesn't exist. And anybody who's skilled in science or journalism knows this, but still it's just a pernicious idea. Got to be objective. But that actually just really, if someone lays that on you, now let's be objective here. What they're doing is they're the oppressor, putting their worldview onto you and not wanting to acknowledge your worldview. It's a bit of a red flag, actually, if someone says that.
Miss, there's a joke in reply that says, whose objectivity are we talking about?
Whose objectivity? Perfect. Yes, well said. Fantastic. So yeah, there is a lot of confusion if we assume there is such a thing as an objective truth. So in a way, what we've got to do is own our context. And no context is right or wrong. We are our context. That's where we start from. So we just own it without apology. And that goes away then of being able to respect other people's context, which is what we're aiming for as well. I keep on thinking there's a lot of information about documentary makers and how often a documentary maker is kind of invisible in the documentary, and yet they are framing and directing the whole feel of it and our whole understanding of who the subjects are. And every now and again, there'll be a doco on the subject of a documentary talking about what it's like to be a subject in it. And it's really quite different. So this, who we are shapes the reality. The other thing that happens to us, of course, with the mirror analogy is that when, like little kitties and sometimes animals, when they look in a mirror, they think the thing is in the mirror and they get freaked out. Like if you've ever had a kitten or a puppy and they've gone, oh, and then very quickly they learn, oh, the thing is not in the mirror, and then they're chill. So with reality, with our day-to-day life, we think the things are out there, just like those kitties think that the thing's in the mirror. And then because we think they're out there, then we get freaked out and frightened, or we get intimidated, or we get grasping, and we forget that we are actually the context as well. The thing's not in the mirror as it appears. And then usually through stress and trauma, we get biases and we get distortions. And so our reflection of reality becomes like a funhouse mirror. So if we're really stressed, of course, even just if you wake up really stressed one day, everything that you experience that day when you go out into the world appears as a threat. So there's our funhouse mirror. To other people who are relaxed and confident, nothing's a threat. And you can't say what's real. You can't say, well, you're wrong or you're right. Even though it's so very tempting to be able to say that to people, don't worry, it's not like that. But if people are already feeling like that, that's how their facts are. So the facts are very much relative. So Ian's saying, when I trained as a cartographer, we had a saying, the map is not the territory, one of my most favourite sayings of all time. Yep, the map is not the territory. In fact, there's an entire book called that, and every page just says that with a different illustration. It's my favourite book.
Yeah, maps are as much defined by what is left off the map as by what is put on. Yeah.
Yeah, and we try and capture everything, don't we? Even our addiction to just photographing everything, trying to hold the thing. But what I like about this analogy with the mirror is that it effortlessly, without exertion, can reflect everything. So this is the kind of open-mindedness that we can look forward to, where we can be so relaxed and at peace and open and connected to others that our mind becomes open and expansive like that and can reflect everything without exertion, without trying, without distortion.
If I love that because the in terms of making a map, decisions were made before the map was made about what should be included and what should not be included. Right, so there are criteria. So the criteria are cooked into the map, and then in the mirror, the picture is always moving, always accepting what is coming in. So yeah, I really like that distinction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more like an interactive map, isn't it? And it's really going to, I mean, a map is for a purpose as well. It's for a function. And so that's what determines what gets baked in and what gets left out. And so that's where that myth of objectivity gets blown up, because what's the purpose? There's always a purpose. There's always a point of view of it. And we can't think that somehow we can take it out and have it pure, because then there is no map, it's just the territory. So kind of winding it back to an experiential level, how do we know we have this we've got the raw experience of collecting the data, but how do we know we have the naivety? How do we know that we don't have a perfectly clear, wonderful mirror without distortion? There are some red flags that we can recognize. So one of them is if we get confused easily, or if we get kind of stressed, like, hang on a second, that's a red flag. So I have that quite often. It's probably from too much information overwhelm. I really need time. And I've noticed sometimes I'll get up an hour earlier just so I can sit and stare into space for an hour and slowly come into the day. And that really makes a big difference. I've noticed, gee, it's actually worth doing that. So if we find ourselves feeling quite head up like that or confused, it shows that we need to actually create some space. The other red flag is if we have an overload of information and don't know what to do with it. So we know all of this stuff, but we can't sort it out. We can't prioritize things. We can't figure out what's useful and what's not, what's just noise. We just know a lot of what's going on. We can't sort it through. And this is also because when data comes in, often we judge it straight away. But what if the information that's coming in, it's unpleasant? So normally, because we're in our red hat, normally we just go, unpleasant, I don't want it. But actually it might be really important information. But we've already judged it because it's unpleasant. We've judged it as bad, so we don't want it. We kind of jump the gun. But actually it might be unpleasant and really important information. Like if you're getting a blister, it's unpleasant, but it's important information. And it happens because we need to act on it. And if we don't, we'll harm ourselves. So just going, oh, I don't want to think about that now, doesn't help. Something might be really pleasant, but a total waste of our time. Another indicator that we have confusion about this is if we're often surprised by things, how things turn out. It's mostly the unexpected that happens. And on top of that, then we feel bad about that being unexpected. We get rigid and uptight instead of relax and see, okay, this is the new perspective now. So I might have said last week, but I'll repeat again, a great quote from James Baldwin, that life depends partly on what you hope will happen and partly on what you're frightened will happen and mostly on what you don't see coming. And so a lot of this is to do with how we relate to the facts, to the data. Part of it is if we're unaware that we're missing something. And often if we're in a state of anxiety or depression, that's what's happening. We have an overwhelming reality and we're unaware that we're missing a piece in the puzzle. And so there's nothing in us that goes, hang on a second, maybe somebody else has experienced this. What did they do? For instance, the Buddha, perhaps he experienced anxiety and depression. What did he do? What so many people have knowledge, wisdom to share, lived experience to share. But often when we're overwhelmed by things, that little thought never comes to mind. Hey, maybe somebody else had this. What did they do? We can also be unaware we're missing something when our attention is so often drawn outwards and we have so much information coming in, especially from social networks, from the interwebs, YouTube, TikTok, all of these really consumable sources of information. What then tends to happen is that we think if it doesn't exist on YouTube, it doesn't exist. Or all the things in the world that exist are on YouTube and there is nothing else. So really, most of the things in the world don't exist on YouTube. And I mean, there is that saying, photos or it didn't happen, which I think is amazing because I look back. Sue, I've just come back from a pilgrimage in Ladakh. And I mean, you've just been in Nepal, and there were so many people in Ladakh doing motorbike road trips as well. Huge, big groups of people all wearing the same outfits. They all looked fantastic. And so, of course, what happens though when you're on holidays, it's only when you've got time or you're a bit bored that you take photos. But the rest of the time, the most intense experiences and many of the temples where taking photos was banned, the most important experiences were totally undocumented.
Mhm.
And so then you come back and it's like, this is really funny because people see your photos and think, oh, that's the pilgrimage. It's like, no, that's the boring bit of the pilgrimage.
Yeah.
The really good bit was not captured.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's 2016, Rose and I went to Bhutan and visited Takshang and did the Layagasa trek. And to be honest, it is exactly that. You review the photographs and you think, no, it was all the points between the photographs where I was paying attention to something else. That was
That's it.
the
Yeah, yeah,
important
yeah.
trip, and no one will ever
Yeah.
see that or experience that on my behalf.
And so again, it's like, so where the facts don't exist out there, they exist in your experience. Yeah. Yeah, so or else then right at the end of the day, our the input, the facts that we experience, we're really clouded, nothing comes in. We're just overwhelmed. We're confounded. It can be a bit like autistic overwhelm or burnout. And that's like where the mirror's just steamed over and nothing can get in anymore. It's just too much. So we've just got to let it calm down again. Give ourselves some space rather than push. Yeah. So now I've got a little of an unusual segment of the class, uh, which is to do with our grasp of the data. And so what I've put up here is what's commonly known as the Rumsfeld matrix.
Oh, I love
So
it.
Donald Rumsfeld, famously in the early 2000s, um, had this whole spiel about known knowns and unknown knowns and all sorts of things, and he actually won a foot in mouth award from the Plain English campaign. But it became incredibly famous, this Rumsfeld matrix, even though he didn't invent it, and it's kind of known as this now. So at the top of the iceberg, there are the two things, the known knowns, things that we're aware of, that we know. We're aware of them and we understand them. And the known unknowns. So things that we're aware of but we don't understand yet. But we know, oh, that's a gap in my knowledge, or that's something that I've really got to work on. Or, that's something that I've misunderstood and I'm aware there's a distortion there. But that's just this tiny tip of the picture, isn't it? So the rest of facts are the unknowns. So on this left-hand side, the unknown knowns, these are things that we know but we're unaware of it. They're not brought into our awareness, into our consciousness. They're things that we deeply know through our experience, but we don't appreciate. And often it's just because we think, oh, they're normal. But then other people come across it and go, that's not normal, or that's a strength that you have. And really, when we underappreciate ourselves, we disconnect ourselves from our power. And the biggest example of this from a Buddhist point of view is the perfect human rebirth. So here we are in this precious human life, which is rare, fortunate, difficult to get. As Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, seems impossible, yet it happened. And here we are, and it is amazing, and we're depressed. But if we really put it into context, we would just feel so lucky, like we've won the lottery. We would feel as happy as if we'd won the lottery, if we really appreciated it and understood all the things that we could do with it. So that's one that we can work on, and that's where a lot of Buddhist psychology works on. Really, our starting point is appreciating how lucky we are and beginning to feel really good about it. Like with all of these hats, these raw wisdoms that we have a possibility to develop. And then the Rumsfeld ones, which is the unknown unknowns, things we're unaware of and don't know. And the quote for this is, "There be dragons." And that's really the uncanny. And so when we're talking about facts, this is actually the data matrix right here. And such a tiny, tiny portion of it is what we think is, well, the facts are the facts. I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing. But actually, there's a whole lot more going on. So you've heard about the Rumsfeld matrix. Do you remember Rumsfeld saying that, his foot in mouth award?
I do, and I remember thinking that he hadn't put his foot in his mouth, that people simply hadn't understood what he'd said. I think at the time, I dropped it in the chat there that we were looking at the Johari window at work, that what you're aware of about yourself and not aware of, and what other people are aware of about you that you're not aware of, and all that. So there's that similar matrix, but between people. And so, I think people fall into the trap of not paying enough heed of what they might not be aware of, and
That's
so
right.
do I, of course.
That's right. And I mean, I loved how he said it too, because it's stuck in everybody's head, hasn't it? This unknown unknowns.
Great.
What about you, Sue? Have you heard about this one?
Yeah, and it just sort of reminds me, when I was in the hospital and the nurses kept asking me questions about what day it was. And I still don't know what day of the week it is unless I look at my phone. And when I'm in the hospital. But it was there's a whiteboard and the date was always written on it. But as an accountant, I don't trust it because it's written by a person. So from their point of view, I was still mentally non-functioning. But from my point of view is, there's a number written on the whiteboard, but I don't know who put it there. I don't know if it's been updated today. I wouldn't rely on it, because if people write stuff on a piece of paper and give it to me, as an accountant, I assume it's incorrect and they've just made it up.
Fantastic.
Love it.
That's absolutely brilliant. Perfect example of that. Yes, so as an accountant, you'd think an accountant deals with facts, and there you are, you're saying as an accountant, you're deeply suspicious of facts.
Yes.
Now that's the voice of experience right there.
Yeah.
As your experience as a data analyst, just nothing. Most of what is captured is often rubbish.
Yes. So, especially the day before the deadline, they hand you a piece of paper with all the numbers are rounded to the nearest 100. They've just made it all up, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's famous too with statistics. You know, you have raw data, statistics, but how you present it, and as if that's like a sleight of hand, but actually, that's actually how things are. It depends how you present it,
Mhm.
and so where the danger is not in the sleight of hand. That's actually our get out of jail card. The danger is in what's the motivation. Are you a bad actor, or are you presenting the data to help us to become liberated from suffering? That's actually where we should be worried about, not the sleight of hand. The sleight of hand is actually reality.
Yeah,
Hmm.
So
that's
it's
great.
kind of to do with how we frame things. So when it comes to how we think of ourselves or how we frame relationships, for instance, it's not even the data, it's how we put it into the words. So the bigger context, often either oneself may be an alcoholic, or you know someone who's an alcoholic, and that's the first port of call. You kind of think, oh, they're an alcoholic. And yeah, that might be true fact, but it's in a very small context, and that context is limiting. So you can kind of expand it out and frame it differently. Oh, my brother who suffers alcoholism. So there you got, he's not just an alcoholic now, he's my brother who has this affliction. But you can also expand it out even further to think, well, a potential Buddha wanting to be free. So how we expand the context, how we reframe it, actually changes the facts, because it changes how we relate to them. Or say, for instance, to do with depression, I'm depressed. And I mean, who in this world hasn't undergone some level of depression? But when it becomes so very deeply ingrained that you're imprisoned by it, you really think I'm depressed, and that's it. That's the end. Even just changing that word to I have depression instead of I am depressed to I have depression changes. It gives us a little bit of flexibility. Then instead of I have depression, I'm undergoing depression. Also helps it a bit more. Once we start looking at the nature of depression and what's really happening, then we can reframe it even more and go, oh, I'm experiencing spiritual growing pains. You know, it feels bad, but it may not be bad. It's growing pains. And then we can even reframe it a bit more to I'm a potential Buddha trying to break free. So we stopped, it's still the same fact, but instead of I am depressed, now it's I am a potential Buddha trying to break free. There's the sleight of hand. It's all in the framing.
Yeah.
And we have this habit of wanting to go, yeah, well, what's the real one? So as we know with a mirror, there is no real one. It just depends on the angle. So I think this is really the thing to remember, that a fact is not separate from its context. In fact, not only is a fact part of its context, a fact is its context.
I
Container
wonder.
and context, they depend on each other. They're two aspects, but they're the one thing. Sorry, Ian?
Yeah, I just wonder that it sometimes perhaps it's a clue if I catch myself referring to myself as a noun or to someone else as a noun of any sort, that I've dropped into that trap, you know, that I am a, or I am that, those kinds of, that they're pretty absolute things, rather than, you know, I'm experiencing, or I'm struggling with
Yeah,
something, agency and movement in it.
that's right.
Verbs
The
are
the absolute things, because that absolute way of describing it, that's what imprisons us. Yep. Mm. So again, we don't have to doesn't mean that we say to people, oh, well, you're not depressed, because no, they are depressed. You are depressed. I am depressed, whatever. It's not that then we deny reality, but it's that we become aware of how we're framing it. And the framing changes the reality legitimately. When I was about 12, I had this fantastic science teacher at school, and she would get people up to demonstrate the experiment. And one day I got to go to be the one going up in front of the class and doing the experiment. I was so excited. And so what she got me to do, she got a bucket of cold water with ice and a bucket of hot water, and she got me to put my one hand in the cold water and one hand in the hot water and leave them there while she talked about blah blah blah, scientific objectivity, etc., etc. And then after about 5 minutes, then she got me to put my hands under the tap. And she said, is the tap hot or cold? It blew my mind. I couldn't even speak.
It's both.
It's both. It's neither. It's what? It was so incredible. But to physically put me through that experience, it has stayed with me my entire life. Is something good or bad? Is it pleasant or unpleasant? Is it useful or not useful? It absolutely depends, and there is no right or wrong. But, to this hand, it was cold, and to this hand, it was hot. True, they were facts. But which one is it really? It depends.
Mhm.
It's a very nice middle way, that one, because you don't deny reality and you don't become imprisoned by reality. Okay, so now our Runsfeld matrix. So now our mandala with the wisdom. So last week the red hat with Amitabha Buddha, and now Vairocana Buddha. All the forms that a Buddha can appear as. So a Buddha, an omniscient being, fully realized, fully enlightened or awakened being can appear in any form to benefit others. So in a way, you can't even say who is a Buddha or who is not a Buddha, because the Buddhas are appearing to us all the time in skillful ways to help us. So this is what we have to look forward to be able to have it in our experience integrated enough that we can change the context and then change our response to whatever is needed. And so that means that we don't have to think, oh, what do we do here? We just actually reflect what's needed. And we don't have to put ourselves forward as I am this or I am that. We just be what's needed to whoever's there. So I notice, say, with someone like Geshe Zopa, he just responds to whoever's there. If an animal is there, he'll be kind to the animal. If there's a little kid, he'll be funny with the kid. If there's someone who's there who's just been bereaved, he will comfort them. He will say how terrible, I understand, I feel for you. Or if there's a dinner party, he'll be telling outrageous stories and everybody rolling on the floor laughing. Just this complete whatever's needed. And then driving around in Ladakh, doing something or other with the bus drivers, he's out there and he's directing traffic. So this is what you can do when you're not stuck in I am this person, I'm this type of person, and I'm not that type of person. You have this incredible flexibility to be whatever is needed. Now, let's see, the order to do it. So how do we actually start applying this wisdom? the white hat wisdom, the mirror-like reality of relativity. One, to remember that there's no inherent facts. And in fact, when we start looking at the facts, we can have a general fact, but when we start really looking to try and find the exact thing, it becomes very, very difficult to find. So, for instance, at the moment, we have a lot of discussion about gender. And so there is a section of people in the world that think, oh, they're just two genders. But I mean, in nature, that's patently not true. But even when we start trying to look at gender, it starts disappearing. You can be born one gender and become another gender. There are animals that change gender according to the climate.
Up to 20 weeks in the womb, I was female. We all were.
Oh, how do you know that? Did they tell you?
That's just a factoid. That every human embryo is potentially and inherently female until 20 weeks and does not develop.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
So, I've been a woman at some point.
Oh, that's really nice to know. That's great. We've got something in common.
Yeah. So
Yes. So, and then even when you start thinking, well, what makes you a man or a woman? You might think it's your shape, your bits. It might be testosterone and whatever it might be, endocrine system. All of these different things. There's always exceptions. To the extent there's a general, but then there's always there's an exception. There's a difference. You can have. I remember in the athletics federation there was one runner who had to carry this certificate around with her because she had this enormous amount of testosterone in her body that she would be legally a man. But she also had this condition where her body couldn't actually use the testosterone, so it didn't matter. So you go, okay, so testosterone's not the decider because there's the exception. And so in the end, you end up with nothing. The Athletics Federation, the International Athletics Federation, has a 12-person committee to decide on what gender somebody is. And they bring in all these experts and they don't even have a definition. It is a case-by-case basis. And that's like the experts in the world. So this kind of points out this is the nature of facts, that you can have a general working hypothesis, working fact, but when you look for it, it cannot be found. Another example about this is like, who are your parents? Who is a mother or a father? So you think, oh, it's I came out of my mother's womb. Well, what about if you're adopted? Or what about surrogates? So I just read a story about a mother and her grown-up daughter, and the grown-up daughter couldn't have kids, so her mother was a surrogate. So she was both the grandmother and the mother. I mean, all of these things. So you have a general thing, but the actual fact cannot be found. And so just to get used to that, and that's okay, that the deeper you go in, this is actually getting to interdependence, dependent arising, and emptiness. And that kind of weird feeling of vertigo that we get when we start investigating, that's a good sign. That helps us relax about the world. That there are general consensus, and that also changes over time, but you can't find any fixed fact. We can ask, whatever situation that we're in, what am I missing? That's a really good approach. What would it be like if I looked at it from their point of view? What am I missing? How is it different? we can be like a self-aware mirror. We can be aware of our own biases and prejudices. So we can think, oh yeah, I grew up in this town and I'm triggered by this type of person. Um, I'm just naturally scared of them now. And just we become aware of that so that when we see that type of person, we don't just get triggered. We just go, oh, there's my distortion. Let's let's find out something new about them. So that general approach of kindness and curiosity, it really cuts through everything. There's in Melbourne there are these incredible community gardens at the bottom of the really tall high-rise housing commission. So they have these community gardens where everyone grows different vegetables and herbs, and then they get all the different nationalities together to just cook up a community feast. And just in sharing your different cultures' food, just that, as we know, it just breaks down barriers, doesn't it? So that's just comes from asking, well, what don't I know about this person? Well, I don't know about their amazing cooking. Yeah, so then we can also ask, and mirror-like wisdom, we can also think of it as camera-like wisdom. The camera never lies. But nevertheless, there's always someone holding the camera, isn't there? So in our life, we're the one holding the camera. So who's holding the camera? Our kind of cultural bias that we have, the different layers of privilege that we have that we're not aware of, how we can be respectful of others rather than kind of cannibalize culture. All of this we can do by asking who's holding the camera. So I've become quite aware of how when we're in a position of privilege, we're never aware of it. We just think that's normal. And so, you know, on one hand, I'm a woman, on the other hand, I'm white. So as a woman, not necessarily as privileged as men, but as a white woman, definitely more privileged. And so one part of me goes, well, who am I really? Well, that's an interesting thought because it all depends. But just to be aware, okay, so when I have the camera to my life, who's holding the camera? I would put myself in context. And so that way, if you own your context, you can be at least try and be naturally respectful to everybody. And that's really the way for peace and harmony, isn't to pretend that I'm not white or a woman, but to actually be aware of the context that I'm in and be respectful, especially for those who are less fortunate, without being the judgmentalism. Right.
Miff,
Any other? Yeah.
just reflecting on that, the idea has occurred to me before, and talking about being in the womb, that nothing in me is of me. In contemplating my own form, right? Not even the two half cells that created my embryo in the first place were mine. Nothing that joined me thereafter through my mother's nutrition or through my eating since has ever been mine. And it comes and it goes, and I'm not the same person from breath to breath. So am I? And I've struggled with this concept of emptiness, and that's the best way I can think of describing it, is that my biology, my experiences, everything comes in from outside and goes back. The iron in my blood was forged in the heart of stars before the sun was lit. It is mind blowing what I am not.
That's right. It is mind blowing. You're right. Like when we look at the body and we go, well, how old are you? Well, you go, well, the iron in my blood is billions of years old.
It's older than the sun.
That's right. Those elements in our body are billions of years old. We're made of stardust, literally billions of years old. who are we? We're not even us. No, we're not. We're our mother's DNA, our father's DNA, all the nutrients. Not only that, but it's not just us here in this body, is there? There's all the little microbes on our skin that are cleaning our skin so we don't suffocate. There's
Thank you, microbes.
yeah, the microbes in our stomach, making sure we can digest. Like, so we're hundreds of thousands of tiny beings keep us alive, are us. And I think the ratio actually for cells in our body to minuscule tiny beings, microbes, is 1 to 8. So
Yeah,
1 cell in our body to 8 keeping us alive. So actually we're only part percentage us anyway. I mean, yeah. So when we go, well, who's me? Am I the body? Well, no, it's not even my body. Um, this can definitely blow our mind. And then we start thinking about our mind and all of our thoughts and our feelings and our experiences. The same thing happens. But one really nice consequence of this is when you go on pilgrimage, you're actually taking your mother and father with you because you carry their DNA. You're actually their DNA. So when you go on pilgrimage or when you do anything virtuous like that, physically, you go to holy places, you're carrying your mother and father with you, and they get the blessings. So it's a really lovely way to repay the kindness for the parents
I
of
love,
having this life.
I love
It's so nice, isn't it? Really fantastic. Take this borrowed apartment with us.
that.
Okay, so then, um, when we have facts, often they can be really big facts and we don't know what to do with them. So this is another one that we think we're all over the facts, but actually it's just the ones that we can handle because, you know, when we ask what's the biggest fact of our generation, biggest fact of our generation at the moment, it's climate change. And yet that's not the thing we're dealing with, is it? That's not the thing we spend all of our money on, and it's not the thing that governments are working towards, or, you know, very many businesses or anything like that. And yet it is the overarching fact
Look
now
away.
and into the future. So we pride ourselves on being logical and fact evidence based and all this kind of stuff. No way. We don't know what to do with these huge big facts. And I think why is because we have a disconnect between what we believe, what we feel, what we like, and what we do. There's a disconnect. So we might be worried about climate change, but we still say might invest in companies that invest in fossil fuels, or we're so bound up with processes that harm the planet. So so there's this conflict, and this conflict that we live in like that, it wears us down. I think as we start to try just personally the best that we can to align how we act with our values, we'll start feeling better. We've got to align how we act with the facts, really.
Mm. And investigating the interbeing of all of those things, you know, that perhaps we have lost collectively that sense of connection, of being utterly dependent upon what is around us, utterly.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said for a very large groups of people do lose that connection. Smaller groups of people, like you look at the smaller countries that, like the Scandinavian countries and things that have, you know, just a couple of million people, and it seems to be a much more workable amount, and people are still human beings first, and corporations and politicians or whatever second. It seems it's easier to humanize a smaller group of people than in a larger society. But for us then, when we find ourselves in a much larger society, if we start focusing on a smaller group of people, like a local community or a bunch of disaffected youth or something, so that people stop being this amorphous blob and start becoming human beings again. That's actually how we can start connecting again. So I mean, that's the other fact about the modern world is this disconnect and how people are yearning for connection. So I read about this fantastic group in Melbourne where it's kind of like social club where they go out and uh, they're all single and the lady who's organizing it, she hires a bus and they go out to and just have an adventure. So they go to a winery or to a valley and a bushwalk or to an animal sanctuary and do a nice thing and then have lunch together and then take the bus back again. And it's just a social club. But
Yeah.
it's a social club with a conscience, doing something for the environment or the animals or something. You're there with other people that are going to be slightly like-minded, and lonely people get to travel and chat with others. And then, of course, you start hooking up and meeting each other outside of that. And now suddenly human beings know how to make friends again when we kind of got so isolated.
Perhaps one of the drivers of business and society at scale is that in order to operate at scale, I think it seems to deal in abstractions, in transactions and abstractions. And that disconnects us from individual instances of anything, including each other. So it's really tricky to look
Yeah,
underneath and to deal with each person as an individual, each thing as a thing of utility with its own origin, and not just a class of thing.
so in terms of this with the white hat, again, once you start thinking of a corporation and forget that a corporation is made of people, that's, you've lost it then. So again, a corporation or when we talk about them, they,
Yeah.
often the blame game's always talking about them or they, it's already made it quite amorphous. And we forget that a corporation isn't a inherent thing unto itself. It's made up of very complex human beings and processes. And this can happen in quite small groups too. So we had just recently some conflict, and someone got a bit upset, going through a really difficult time, and they wrote to our executive committee saying the committee this and the committee that, and I needed help, and you didn't do this and you didn't do that. And what was really interesting was that talking the committee, as a thing, not as a being, the language was really blamey and quite aggressive. And yet, that same person, when talking to each person on the committee, completely different. So this happens to all of us. The moment we just think a thing and we think it exists out there independently of us, we lose our humanity as well. And so we start blaming and we get aggressive and we don't watch our speech, and it all goes from there. It's where we get all sorts of incredible violence and political unrest. When we pull it back to human beings, it starts getting better. Then if we can pull it back again to human beings in their context, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, so the result, then we'll do our little meditation. The result of being free of the naivety of being imprisoned by facts, imprisoned by, I suppose, inherent facts, as if they were inherent. If we can have this unbiased, undistorted, mirror-like wisdom or camera-like wisdom, we naturally become relaxed and confident because we don't have to project ourselves as I am this person, this type of person, and you better respect me. We just embody it. Then our actions become powerful and our life becomes meaningful because there is a harmony between how we're acting, what we can do in the situation. What we can do in the situation is just our best, isn't it? Where we do have confines, where we have limitations at the moment, but we can still do our best. And then if we can live in harmony with the facts, if we do recognize the distressing facts of our life and keep them in mind, and also the facts that we, so like climate change and social injustice and things, but if we also keep in mind the incredible powerful facts, like we have a potential to liberate ourselves and others from suffering, then our mind is peaceful, we've got energy, we can respond as appropriate. The best thing about it that we can look forward to working on this wisdom is that we stop getting interference in the data, noise in the data. Instead of like, everyone just shut up. We're relaxed and open enough that any bit of information that comes in, we go, oh, that's interesting. And we just slot it in till we need it, till we need to refer back to it at some stage. Okay, so before we do our last meditation, any last questions or comments? How are we going? How are you going, Sue?
That's all very interesting, and I recognize I need to do some work in this area, and really just
Like it.
self-awareness and I haven't really, I just recognize that thinking about things more deeply and not so shallowly is something I need to work on.
Yeah, so maybe just to the next deep level, because it's a really good start to have this this lived experience of facts,
Mhm.
like mathematics
Mhm.
and finance and all those things, but also to know how malleable and tricky they can be.
Mhm.
So this is a fantastic thing that you'll be able to come back to again and again to see the real, to go into the depths of it. Because, when we look at finances, that too, it's an expression of our cultural values, isn't it? People
Mhm.
can say, oh, we value this and that, but actually, no, you can say whatever you want. It's what's actually being expressed here. What are the facts?
Mhm.
And while we have a discrepancy there between what we say our values are and the facts of the matter, it's going to cause distress. But again, that distress, it's like having a blister. It shows us this is important to investigate. So
Mhm.
even that, when we find ourselves becoming distressed about things, don't even try and push that away. Just recognize it for what it is, and that's because it's important to look deeper. And then maybe the meditation that we do to end can help us that when we look deeper, we don't get more stressed. We look deeper, we actually connect with our mirror-like wisdom and be able to become open and calm,
Yeah.
calm reflection. All right, so let's do our meditation and then wrap up. So take a nice deep breath. Let out any stale air from the lungs. Another nice deep breath. So your body is oxygenated. Settle into a comfortable position. Your spine straight, but your body relaxed. and letting go of any tensions or distractions, bringing your awareness fully into the present moment. So your mirror-like wisdom reflects reality with pristine clarity. It perceives all phenomena without bias or judgment. What might it be like to perceive the world so purely? Imagine your mind as a flawless mirror, effortlessly reflecting everything before it. Each sight, sound, each experience shines with vivid presence. How might this shift your perspective on daily events? With each inhalation, feel your awareness expanding. With each exhalation, sense a letting go. Notice any impulse to interpret or judge what arises. Can you simply allow phenomena to be as they are? With any thought or sensation or emotion that arises, feel your awareness expanding, and without judgment, let that experience go. The mirror-like wisdom embraces all experience impartially, without grasping onto pleasantness or resisting unpleasantness. It harmonizes apparent opposites into an intimate unity. This is a reflection unencumbered by physical or cultural constraints. The mirror-like wisdom effortlessly sees both the largest and most powerful people and the most small and vulnerable, without missing out anyone. Our human senses inevitably limit our perception, yet the mirror-like wisdom reflects the totality of existence. The mirror never gets full. The mirror perfectly reflects all phenomena, the tumultuous and the still, without itself becoming disturbed. The clear nature of mirror-like wisdom is unsullied and undisturbed by the reflections within it. This means that as we learn about the world around us, as we discover new events, perhaps even very distressing ones, as we meet new people, as we experience the flux of change, our mirror-like awareness remains tranquil. And this clarity arises spontaneously. It transcends the conceptual mind. It doesn't require deliberate effort or force. It's simply resting, open and receptive. Allowing reality's truth to be perfectly mirrored. So imagine offering this luminous presence to all beings, resting in the confidence of your innate wisdom. And dedicate that whoever you encounter, that you mirror their entirety, that you mirror not just their anger, but their potential, that you mirror not just their desirability, but their wisdom. And that you mirror not just their ordinary, but their Buddha potential. So in dedicating the merits in that way, you can take another nice deep breath. Bring your focus back to the room. And our takeaway for today for our white hat. Our task with our mirror-like reality of relativity to try and be like a self-aware mirror. Not just reflecting, but also that tranquility and stillness of a mirror. Doesn't matter what's going on around us, we can remain tranquil. To own your context, to be aware of your own context in everything that you do, and not be embarrassed, not be in denial. Just be aware of it, and then that will also help us to respect others as well, just naturally. Reframe your facts. It's the other one. So we can train in words. When we're feeling particularly rigid or stuck, try describing it in a different way. Even just by saying, well, what would the Dalai Lama say? He'd probably describe that person or that situation in a totally different way. So quickly write it down. There's our reframing starts. And remember that who do we need to be in any situation? It's not who am I, but what type of person do I need to be here to help others? And then we can just reflect that back. I mean, I've heard even with when you're having conversations with people to reflect their body language. So some people do that apparently, and that it's really effective. Just even that, just being a mirror of reflecting. Yeah, I'm like you. I'm no threat. Helps people. So who do we need to be? And then we can be it. So next week we're on to the blue hat, which is all about the process. And it's about the sphere of reality and Akshobhya Buddha. So in a way, these two, the white hat and the blue hat, to go together because one's form and one's function. So form is like all of the shape, the data, and the function, the process. So I hope to see you both. Have a really fantastic week enjoying your mirror-like wisdom. And take care,
There's
and
so
let's
much,
see you again next time.
Mhm.
there's so much to practice. Thank you so much.